Team Fortress 2, the game that's been around since dinosaurs roamed the earth. Okay, maybe not that long, but it sure feels like it. And yet, somehow, this game has managed to survive all these years, like a cockroach in a nuclear apocalypse. But let's be real here, Tf2 should have been dead by now. It's like that one friend who just won't leave your party even though it's 3 a.m. So why is it still hanging around? Let's dive in and find out why Tf2 hasn't kicked the bucket a long time ago. But first, are you subscribed? No? Everyone watching this video isn't subscribed, so please sub to the channel so I can feed my 50 children. Tf2 was first released in October of 2007 as part of the Orange Box bundle. The Orange Box also included Half-Life 2, Half-Life 2 Episode 1, Half-Life 2 Episode 2 and Portal. It was a huge release for Valve, and it was met with a lot of excitement from gamers. At the time of its release, Tf2 was a pretty big departure from the original Team Fortress game, which was released as a Quake mod back in 1996. Tf2 had a much more cartoonish art style and a lot more personality than the original game. It also had a lot of new gameplay mechanics, like the ability to switch between different classes on the fly and the addition of character-specific weapons and abilities. The launch of Tf2 was a huge success. The game was praised for its humor, its gameplay, and its overall presentation. Reviewers loved the game's attention to detail, from the way that each character had their own unique personality and backstory to the way that the game's levels were designed. Tf2 quickly became one of the most popular online multiplayer games out there. It had a huge community of players who created all sorts of mods, maps, and custom game modes. The game was constantly updated with new content, which kept players coming back for more. Tf2 was in its heyday. Back in the late 2000s and early 2010, Tf2 was one of the biggest games on the planet. It was the go-to game for a lot of people, and it had a huge following. And for good reason. Tf2 was, and still is, a really fun game. It had a great sense of humor, some awesome characters, and really solid gameplay. It was a game that you could sink a lot of time into, and people did. The game was full of all sorts of jokes and gags, from the over-the-top character personalities to the way that the levels were designed. The game was just a lot of fun to play, and it never took itself too seriously. Each character had their own unique personality and backstory, and players quickly found themselves drawn to their favorite characters. Whether you loved the over-the-top antics of the Heavy, the cool and collected demeanor of the Spy, or the lovable goofiness of the Pyro, there was a character in Tf2 for everyone. Of course, all of this wouldn't have mattered if the gameplay wasn't solid, but thankfully, Tf2 delivered in spades. The game's class-based gameplay was incredibly well designed, with each class having its own strengths and weaknesses. The game was also incredibly balanced, which meant that no one class felt overpowered or underpowered. This made for some really engaging matches, and it kept players coming back for more. All of these things combined to make Tf2 a game that people could sink a lot of time into. The game had a lot of depth to it, with all sorts of different strategies and playstyles to explore. Whether you wanted to play a support role and heal your teammates as the medic, go in guns blazing as the Heavy, or sneak around and backstab enemies as the Spy, there was a playstyle in Tf2 for everyone. Tf2 was a game that had a lot of things going for it. It was funny, it had great characters, and it had solid gameplay. It was a game that you could sink a lot of time into, and people did. It's no wonder that the game was so popular in its heyday, and it's a testament to its quality that it's still popular to this day. While Tf2 is still a popular game, it's worth noting that there have been plenty of times throughout its history where it seemed like the game was on its last legs. There are a few reasons why Tf2 should have died, but for whatever reason, it's managed to soldier on. When Overwatch was released in 2016, many people thought that this would be the end of Tf2. After all, Overwatch was a brand new game from Blizzard, one of the biggest names in the gaming industry, and it had a lot of hype surrounding it. On top of that, Overwatch and Tf2 shared a lot of similarities. Both were team-based, class-based shooters with a focus on colourful characters and over-the-top action. Despite these similarities, however, Tf2 managed to hold its own. While there were certainly some players who moved over to Overwatch, Tf2's player base remained strong. In fact, some players even argued that Overwatch was actually a good thing for Tf2, as it helped to bring in new players and raise awareness of the class-based shooter genre. Tf2 was able to survive the release of Overwatch was because of its dedicated community. Tf2 has always had a passionate fan base, and these fans continued to play and support the game even in the face of competition from a newer, flashier game. The Tf2 community also continued to create new content for the game, with fan-made maps, mods, and skins keeping the game fresh and exciting. While Overwatch and Tf2 shared some similarities, the two games had their own distinct personalities. Tf2 had a more cartoonish and irreverent tone, while Overwatch was more serious and polished. Some players simply preferred the style and gameplay of Tf2 over Overwatch, and this helped to keep the game alive. While the release of Overwatch was certainly a challenge for Tf2, the game managed to hold its own thanks to its dedicated community, unique identity, and enduring appeal. And today, Tf2 continues to be a beloved game for many players, proving once again that it truly has stood the test of time. Tf2 has had its fair share of issues over the years. The game has had a number of updates that have introduced bugs and glitches, and there have been times when the game's servers have been down for extended periods of time. Tf2 also suffered due to mismanagement by Valve, and the inability of the Tf2 team to do anything about it without being fired. The increased amounts of bots have made the game unplayable. But then, things started to slow down. Tf2 wasn't getting as many updates as it used to, and the community started to dwindle. There were other games coming out that were taking people's attention away from Tf2. After the release of Meet Your Match update in 2016, the frequency of updates began to slow down, leading some players to worry that Valve had abandoned the game. The Tf2 community also began to shrink, with some players moving on to other games or losing interest in the game altogether. But even in the face of these challenges, Tf2 managed to hang on. While updates may not come as frequently as they once did, Valve has still released new content for the game over the years, including new maps, weapons, and game modes. And even without regular updates, Valve's support for the game in terms of bug fixes and server maintenance has helped to ensure that Tf2 remains a stable and enjoyable experience for players. This allowed the community continued support. There were still plenty of fans who loved the game and continue to create new content for it. From custom maps and game modes to new weapon skins and hats, the Tf2 community has continued to keep the game fresh and exciting. So why hasn't Tf2 died yet? Well, there are a few reasons. The game still has a really dedicated fan base. There are still a lot of people out there who love playing Tf2 and who are willing to stick with it, even when other games are coming out. And to be honest, there really isn't anything else quite like Tf2 out there. Tf2's unique blend of humor, style, and gameplay mechanics have helped it to stand the test of time. It's a game that is still fun to play even years after its release, and that's something that not many games can claim. The game's longevity is also due to the dedication of its fan base. There are still plenty of people out there who love playing Tf2 and who are willing to put in the time and effort to keep the game alive. Another key factor in Tf2's continued success is its community. The Tf2 community is one of the most passionate and dedicated in all of gaming, and that's really saying something. Even when Valve stopped updating the game for a while, the community stepped up and started creating their own content. This level of creativity and dedication has helped to keep the game fresh and exciting, even when Valve wasn't actively developing new content. Finally, Valve's own support for the game has played a role in its longevity. While updates may not come as frequently as they once did, Valve has still released new content for the game over the years, including new maps, weapons, and game modes. And even without regular updates, Valve's support for the game in terms of bug fixes and server maintenance has helped to ensure that Tf2 remains a stable and enjoyable experience for players. In conclusion, Tf2 is a game that has managed to survive and thrive for over a decade, thanks to its unique style, engaging gameplay, dedicated fanbase, passionate community, and Valve's continued support. It's a testament to the enduring appeal of the game that it's still going strong, even in the face of newer, shinier games. And who knows, maybe it will continue to be around for many more years to come.